don't want to go
Hi, everybody. David Nour with you for another episode of the Inner Circle live stream and podcast coming to you live. Look at this. We're back in the trade show business. We're actually at Connects FM. Bill Yannick is the CEO. Connects FM is the industry association for retail facilities management. And I'm joined by a longtime friend, client, and what a fascinating story. One of the sharpest executives I know and I work with, James Mylett. Welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the invite.
It is good to have you. For our audience, we're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and we repurpose these as a podcast as well. And the intent is really plant the seed with next book. If you followed my work on relationship economics, curve benders, co-create, I tend to think about books for a number of years and start to ideas percolate, and you research and you interview great executives and you start to bring these stories in. So in this episode, I've known James for a number of years. As you'll learn more about his background, just a fascinating background. And we want to talk about success, really thriving as a private equity-backed CEO. Again, as you hear more about James's background and story, I think this is really going to resonate. So let's start with a brief introduction, where you've been, what you've done, how you've gotten here.
Yeah, I'm working on pronoun management right now because I just stepped into the role as the CEO of Smart Care Solutions. So we're the leading provider of food service equipment services in the U.S., have about 1,700 field technicians, so a very substantial workforce. But I'm coming off of 8 wonderful years at Schneider Electric, where I had the privilege to lead the buildings business in the U.S. So David's caught me a number of times this week talking about us when it's not really us. It's the former company and the team over there. But thrilled about the path forward with Smart Care. And this event has been just spectacular. It's been an opportunity to reconnect with some people I hadn't seen in a number of years. The CEO of Vixo was here, and I had a chance to say hello to him and give him a hug. I hadn't seen him in about 10 years. But the information flow here has just been off the charts. The sense of community at this event is exceptional.
So talk a little about how did you learn about Smart Care? How did you decide to kind of make you were on their board, and how do you decide to make the leap to now become the CEO?
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a call from Conrad, who's one of the principals at Windpoint Partners, over 4 years ago about taking a CEO role. And I wasn't interested. I was fully engaged in what was going on with Schneider at the time. But I was interested in doing some board work. So I put that on the table, and he invited me to join the board of a roll-up that they were putting together that started with a company called Zone Refrigeration in Chicago, a wonderful company that the founder is still a part of the business. And from that, it's evolved into a point where we acquired Smart Care and enrolled the companies together and created this enterprise that we have now.
And for our audience who may not be as familiar with Smart Care, just give us a glimpse into the footprint.
Yeah, so we take care of your local grocery stores, convenience stores, and also some of the most iconic brands that we all love to go to, like Starbucks and Cheesecake Factory and H-E-B stores and Whole Foods, places like that. So there's infrastructure in those places that are backstage that are critical to you getting the experience that you have when you're in the facility, whether it's a racetrack store where you get in there, you get the service you want, you get an opportunity to get back to what you're doing. Whether or not the hot dog machine is working or the cooler is working, our team works with those customers to make sure that it's on all the time.
So we were here putting on a leadership summit for the leaders of Connects FM, and again, a lot of facilities management and suppliers that service them. One of the things I appreciated is early on in our interaction through Service Council, you not only you got relationship economics, but I think you live it. You live it in kind of how you show up as a leader. You live it in how you nurture the development of other leaders. When I talk about this idea of an inner circle, a small set of your most valuable relationships, talk about what comes to mind and how that's been really instrumental to your personal and professional success over the years.
It's people. So when I think about the circle, I think about the individuals that are in the circle rather than the circle itself. And it evolves over time. It extends out, and in crisis situations, sometimes it narrows down. But I think it all starts with trust, right? So there's individuals that we have a trusting relationship, and we're able to give each other honest feedback and input, and to help us grow. One of the best hiring decisions I made years back when I became a regional vice president at Johnson Controls was to ask my former boss to come back and work for me on the team. And the reason was I knew he didn't have a high need for approval, and I knew he was going to be as candid as possible with me, telling me the things that I needed to hear, even though I might not want to hear those things. And then there was another individual there named Randy Wallen, who I brought back to the company. And Randy was a peer of mine, and I hired him in to work for me. And Randy's probably one of the best coaches I've ever had. And he was working for me, but he was always working with me on behalf of me. And there was a number of moments where he reached out offline to offer up some advice and coaching that I needed in that moment. And he's still part of my circle.
Love that. Trust is the foundation. Can you think of an example where your inner circle was instrumental in you making a tough decision or in you making a difficult decision to kind of move the business forward?
It's always. So I think, last week, my first week on the job, I wanted to make sure that I got out to the operating companies, and I spent some time with the founders of some of these companies that we've acquired over the years, just get a sense of where things are. And so we had a wonderful visit to a company called Remco in Birmingham, Alabama, and the son of the founder and the brother of the founder are still in the business. And they do unbelievable. So they have 90% first-time fixed rates with some of their customers. So it's a great operation there. But as we were wrapping up, one of the individuals asked me if there was anything that he could do for me. And I'm wrestling right now. I'm wrestling with a decision that I need to make that is a choice between 3 or 4 really crummy levers to pull on, right? It's just
good option.
That's why, we do what we do, right? You have to make the best choices on behalf of the 3 constituents, your customers, your people, and your investors, and find that right balance. And I'm struggling with one right now. And so I brought them into the circle, gave them my trust, right? Because trust is always given, it's not earned. You can do everything you think that you should do to earn somebody's trust, but until they give it to you, you don't have it. And so I offered that up, and their feedback was wonderful. And it's definitely framed the decision that I'll make later this week. And I'm appreciative of it. I was listening to Tom Bostic is here with us, a retired general, and he was sharing some of the things that he's done along his career of writing thank you cards to people. And I've got one of the first things I ordered was some thank you cards, and I'll be sending a thank you card to Bruce and Rich.
So you talked about trust. Yeah. Talk about some of the other attributes that are critical in people that you choose to bring in close. And one of the things I've always said is ideal if they don't have an agenda, ideal if they see, and it's mutual, but they see your success and they have a vested interest in your success. Talk about some of the other attributes that are really important to you.
But I think the agenda is to help us win, right? So, we could talk about who's in the us piece of it, but I think this notion of helping the collective to get better on behalf of our people, our investors, and our customers is core. But diversity is at the forefront of those decisions. And when I look back on the leadership team that I left at Schneider Electric, it's an unbelievably diverse team in any definition of the word. And I think the diversity about the team that I appreciate the most, aside from the gender diversity that I'm proud of and the ethnic diversity that I'm proud of, it's the backgrounds of the individuals that are on that leadership team. 50% of the leaders on that team came from outside of my business. All of them came from inside of the company. So I had an opportunity to really get game film on these leaders and make sure that there was a playing field for cultural contribution where they would get something from my team and we would get something from them.
Got it. Talk about when, and if this has happened to you in your past, where the person didn't fit, the person didn't work, or it wasn't, you had some, perceptions of they'll either be able to contribute or they'll be a good fit. And for whatever reason, it didn't work. Why didn't it work? And then how do you politely, and I love your comment that the circle expands and contracts based on different scenarios. Talk about a situation where it didn't work.
I think at the senior leadership levels, and this is one of the reasons that from a casting standpoint, I try to cast people into the most senior positions that we do have game film on, because there is a cultural contribution aspect of it that if you don't get that right, it cascades across the whole organization. And so if there's an opportunity to leverage game film, let's take advantage of that. So the failures I've seen there have been more a matter of casting for a role as opposed to casting for fit, right? So I think the leadership teams I've been privileged to be a part of do a really good job of casting for cultural contribution and fit. But sometimes we miss the mark on what energizes a person. And sometimes they miss the mark because there's a title that's very attractive and a team to be a part of that's very attractive. But to step onto that playing field, there's a basket of work that's in scope for your job. It's not who you are, and you get caught up in what the title is and you don't pay enough attention to what's in the basket of work. And you cast yourself into a situation where even if you're okay or good, you're never going to be at your best. So part of the coaching I give leaders all the time is to first figure out what you don't want to do, right? And pay attention to the things that just suck the life out of you. And when you think about casting yourself for a position, use that as a filter for everything. And I think all of us land in a better spot, because if you cast yourself for those roles that are populated with things that energize you and strengthen you when you're doing it, you're in the zone, and everybody wins.
Everybody notices, everybody sees it.
But I think that the big thing, just to kind of put a button on the question, when you see it, you have to act on it. And that's the responsibility of any leader, is when you have someone on the team who is clearly not aligned culturally with where you're taking the organization and can't get there, you have to make a decision and move for them and for the team.
You brought up, for our audience, General Tom Bostic is the retired former chief of Army Corps of Engineers. He'll be a future guest on our Inner Circle live stream and podcast as well. One of the things you and I noticed, he talked several times yesterday about putting exceptional talent on some of your most pressing, priorities, initiatives, projects. How can a inner circle of relationships make that sharp individual who has all the right ingredients even that much potentially more successful with that really important initiative?
I'm in the process, so this is maybe a heads up for my team. I'm in the process of doing that right now, because it works so well for me in prior roles where I get exposure and experience with emerging talent in the organization, and I invite them to join the executive leadership team. And there's two things that happen. One, we make better decisions because there's somebody closer to where the work actually that gets done has a voice on the team and can say, hey boss, I understand what you're thinking, and I know that looks good on that whiteboard, but what you don't understand is, and then fill in the blank. That's invaluable, right? So that insight and connectivity to the practical implications of strategy execution gets better when that voice is at the table. But the other piece for them is it gives them exposure to how things actually get done, and what goes into making some of these decisions that on the receiving end of it, maybe you scratch your head and say, I don't understand why corporate, right, made that choice. Well, guess what? Anytime you hear corporate, erase that, put your name in it, because you're in the circle now, right? So, I've already communicated to my team this week that I need some insight into, who those individuals might be. It's something that historically I've rotated. So I bring somebody in for maybe 12 to 18 months to be a part of it. We learn from them, they learn from us, and the organization gets stronger as a result.
In yesterday's leadership program, I love this comment. Somebody asked you about your biggest competitors.
Yeah.
And your response, I wasn't expecting that. Talk about often, a lot of companies, particularly PE-backed, obviously have to compete in a given market. We all have competitors, but you think about competition a little differently. Talk about those two attributes.
Yeah. So I always think about competition in the context of my customers and my people, right? So when I think about my customers, I try to get clear on what it is they're trying to get done for their customers, right? Or if they are the end user, what they're trying to get done is in terms of their mission, and how can my team help them fulfill their mission? And if I'm good at that and I ask the good questions, I'm in a better position to bring them solutions that matter. Most people don't do that. Most people, when they go in, their intent, which comes into the room before you do, right? It's a really clear message. Your intent goes into the room before you do. So is your intent to try to figure out how that customer can help you achieve your annual operating plan? Or is your intent trying to figure out how all these resources that I've assembled in my team can help that customer achieve their business goals? And so my answer to the question yesterday was, at Schneider Electric in the buildings business, my two most formidable competitors were status quo and our inability to get out of our own way. And what I mean by that is just knocking down the normal silos that exist inside of organizations, but at speed and with velocity. The team is doing a wonderful job of coming together as one team in the marketplace. But coming out of the national meeting, a North American meeting last week, there was a clear view that we needed to go even faster because our customers need us to. They're trying to solve sustainability challenges, efficiency challenges, and that organization is ideally positioned to help them. Similar situation here in the space that we're in. There's a supply chain crisis for skilled labor. It's not new. We've all been talking about this in industry for 20 plus years. It's not new, but it's worse. And if I come back next year, I'll tell you the same thing. It's not new, but it's worse, because for every 5 people that lead the skilled trades, there's only 2 that come in, right? So there's a supply chain crisis without a clear solution on the horizon. So our role in this business that we've assembled is to make the investments that create a differentiated value proposition for those who are in the skilled trades, to where they come here and be a part of something bigger than they could have been where they were, and get access to training that's more robust.
And I can thrive.
And get leadership development. And the bigger piece is being a part of a community. And I heard Tom mention this yesterday, that you may not know the answer, but somebody here does, right? So the here gets expanded when you're a part of a team that has 1,700 technicians. And so you may not know the answer to that problem, but I promise you that somebody has been in that position before, faced that problem and solved it. And because you're now part of our community, we can connect you. And then because you're connected, you're in a better position to look smarter in front of your customer, which, if you're a field technician, I used to be one of those guys. That's a great day, when you're out there and you can solve a problem that nobody was able to solve before.
You, for our audience, if you just joined us, you're listening to James Mylett, formerly Senior Vice President of Digital Buildings at Schneider Electric. More recently, he became CEO of Smart Care Solutions. Talk about your perception or your priorities of, obviously, a very different role. How do you thrive as a PE-backed CEO? What is taking up headspace, priority? What are you really focused on? I know it's early in the job, but I also know you, and you're already playing 3-dimensional chess.
Yeah, no, the wheels are turning for sure. So, look, I think it starts with being clear about what the goal is and what it is we're trying to get accomplished on behalf of those 3 constituents. So I've got a clear expectation that's been set with my investors. They invested money in this company, and there's a return that they expect within a certain timeline. So I have a responsibility to deliver that. For my people, it's my clear responsibility to make sure every one of them makes it home safely to their friends and family at the end of every day, right? And that's something that weighs heavily on me every day. I think one of the things I'm most proud of at my tenure at Schneider was the team that I had the privilege of leading. As I exited the organization, we had gone 8.7 million hours worked without a lost time injury. It's unbelievable performance in this space, but it's cultural. It takes time. So we'll build that out here at Smart Care. But I think for me right now, it really starts with trying to get clarity from our customers. Some of them are here, on what really matters to them. What are the most important things that we can do to bring value to you, so you're in a better position to win with your customers. And so things like first time fix rate is really important. So how can I create better processes and systems to where my people are in a better position to show up on the job, and when they leave the job, the equipment's working again, You know, like I mentioned before, Remco, one of their customers, a large national restaurant chain. It was my dad's favorite place to go, by the way. 90% first time fix rate. That's best in class any metric I've ever looked at. But they have a system to make that happen. So I don't have to go figure this out, because I've never been able to figure out 90%. Never in my life. These guys have figured it out.
Yeah.
Right. So all I've got to do is create connectivity between the operating companies so that they can benefit from this. And this is one of the key lessons I learned at Comfort Systems. I was at Comfort Systems a little less than 4 years and worked for Brian Lane, who was the CEO there. And Brian had this mentality that if it's not bringing value to the field organization, we probably shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
And if the field isn't pulling for it, it's not because the field isn't smart. It's probably because what you're trying to get them to pull sucks. so go find something different, you know? And it was a really good lesson for me.
One of the things I say when you're around, one of the things I say when you're not around is you've got this ridiculous knack for identifying exceptional talent and really channeling that energy, the talent, the intellectual horsepower, the passion into the right opportunities. Talk about how do you do that? Talk about if there's a James Mylett secret for you walk into a company, and you and I deeply believe in, you know, exceptional talent will help you thrive in any role as a leader. And so how do you identify those people? How do you love on them? How do you ensure that they're really well positioned to succeed? And some of the young guns you and I both know you've worked with, right? It's amazing that we're going to work for some of these folks one day.
I just ran into another one of them here. Jason Dunn is just unbelievable sales talent that I met when I first came to Schneider Electric. He was a sales assistant, and there were some things in some of the meetings that we participated in around his energy, his drive, his passion that broke him out of the pile immediately. And so then it's a matter of getting to know that individual a little bit more, creating opportunities for them to learn and grow, ensuring that the leaders that they work for are leaders that care about them personally, care about their personal and their development, right? And are making those investments with an individual like Jason, who's now a sales leader over there. But I think for me, it starts with this just notion, it's an obligation to pay it forward, right? So I've been in this business for a lot of years, so 40 some odd years, a lot of years. And I've been a beneficiary of a number of people who have given me a chance. And in some cases when they probably shouldn't have, but they took a chance on me, and I'm forever thankful for that. R.O. Hunton in Houston, who owns the Train franchise, is one of the people who gave me my first opportunity to go into sales. You know, didn't have to do that, but there was something he saw in me that I appreciate. And so I think part of my wiring is to try to find opportunities to pay it forward. So that comes in the form of doing mentoring, group mentoring, coaching. The thing that you can provide that demonstrates that you care more than anything else is your time. Right. So the willingness,
especially one-on-one time with those individuals.
I spent some time this morning with someone who was in the conference yesterday, and he wanted to talk about career and stuff. And you have to make time for that stuff, because it really is. It's an obligation. But as you do that, part of the conversation this morning was try to unpack and help individuals see clearly, what don't you want to do? Most people spend all their time talking about what they want to do. Get clear on what you don't want to do. Use that as a filter for every sexy opportunity that might come up that could be a really bad casting decision for you. And so my role, and part of this is probably because I'm a theater dad, my daughter Erin is in theater, but I really love this notion of casting. And I can't tell you what makes you feel energized. I could tell you where I see your performance good, performance not good, but you're the only one that can tell me when you feel like the life's been sucked out of you or when you're energized. And if you can get that up on the table and help me understand that, now I'm in a position to help you understand what roles might be optimal casting roles, to where you don't have to take one for the team. You know, what you contribute to the team is casting yourself into your swim lane where you're going to thrive.
Have you ever used an inner circle? And again, think of it as a personal board of advisors for personnel decisions, for people. Hey, here's somebody I'm thinking of either for this role, or here's somebody that may or may not be. Can you give it another lens and see? And how did that work?
Yeah. So when I took the role at Schneider to lead the buildings business, what came with that was ownership of a board seat on the federal business that we had. And so the chairman of that board is General Al Edmonds. And my first interactions with Al, what went through my head is, the company is paying for him to be the chairman. I'm going to get the most out of this investment because I can learn a lot from this leader, just in the way he carried himself. And so I was dealing with a decision on some talent. I had some really top talent from outside the company that wanted to come in, and I had some other talent that wasn't ready from a skill set standpoint. And I remember this like it was yesterday. His question to me was, we were talking about the younger talent. He said, do you trust them? And I said, yeah. He said, do you think they'll get there over time? And I said, yeah, absolutely. He said, that's your decision. That's who you hire. And he explained to me why, and he gave me examples on why it served him and his teams in the Air Force so well over the years. And I did it, and it was everything he said it was going to be.
Which is people people you trust, and people you believe will get there at some point.
Yeah, and they're, part of it is I've been given opportunities to do roles that I wasn't ready for. And I'm eternally grateful for the leader that put me in that position. And I would do anything I could to make sure that I delivered for the leader and for the team. And so you get that benefit coming into it. So there's a level of commitment to the cause and to the mission that you get right out of the gate from the individual. There's no buffer time for this person to come into the company and figure out, is this the right environment for me? All this, that's already made, and it's just skill set development. And so you can always put that in.
Talk about the biggest differences on, being on a board member of this company versus now hands-on CEO, a lot more on your shoulders to actually operate, execute, and deliver.
Yeah, it's interesting. So when we talk about the Inner Circle, and it flexes, right? So there's a lady named Liz Hegarty who was the CEO of Oldcastle, a big glass company. And we reconnected after 5 years. I hadn't talked to her in probably 5 years. And we reconnected just as I was coming onto the board at SmartCare. And I was asking her, what do good board members do for you as a CEO? And she said, the rule is nose in, but hands off. And it just brought clarity to me, the way that she positioned it, because as a board member, especially in a space that you really understand, there's a propensity to just want to jump in and help. And that's not your role. Your role is to advise and give guidance. And the chairman of the board, Steve Hockheiser, he's exceptional at it. And he asks forward-looking questions instead of focusing on what happened. It's all about what's going to change moving forward. And so there was some lessons learned there just from observation.
So again, for our audience, if you just joined us, you've been listening to James Mylett, formerly Senior Vice President of U.S. Digital Buildings, more recently CEO of SmartCare Solutions. It's a private equity-backed firm, and I'm always fascinated by, the expectations and how do you really thrive in that. You're right. There's expectations from your investors. There's expectations from your customers, particularly in the roll-up environment where you bring very disparate types of companies together in making that work. You are also, as you mentioned, and I've seen it firsthand, a huge proponent of coaching and mentoring, the next generation talent. If you were coaching, again, some of the young guns you and I both know, in building their inner circle, in maybe the spring or the summer of their careers, what were some of the things you would suggest to them? Where do they start? How do they not just build the initial inner circle, but nurture it over time? So when they do get to you're still in the fall of yours, but fall and winter of their careers, that it really becomes impactful.
I'm not sure which inning I'm in, but it's not the fifth. So I can tell you the coaching I do give on that, because we talk a lot about that. And some of the leaders I've coached recently are sales leaders, so they're very familiar with the whole notion of a relationship map. And some of this is some of the training that you brought to that organization, but really mapping out the relationships inside a customer organization that are going to be impactful in terms of the customer's decisions and how they make that, and you understanding what they're trying to get done. It's really no different in mapping out your career journey. If you can get clarity on where it is you want to go, and think about the backpack that you have to carry with you at each stage of this journey. What do you need in that backpack to be successful as a frontline leader, as a manager of managers, or as an enterprise leader? start building that. And then what are the relationships that are going to count? So, for example, if I'm in this organization and I want to get to this position, let's say I want to be the CEO. And frankly, I told you this story. I'll share it with the audience. I was at one of our other operating companies a few weeks ago, and we had a town hall. And one of the technicians, his name was Roberto, one of the most professional technicians I've been around. He came up to me afterwards and he said, "Hey, I just want to say thank you for coming out here. I appreciate it. I love doing this." And he goes, "No, you don't understand." He goes, "Now I know I can do it." I said, "Do what?" He goes, "I can be there." And he pointed at my chest. I said, what do you mean?" He goes, "I know I can be there because you used to be here." Right?
So going from a technician to a CEO.
Yeah. So as I think about that journey, right,
Mhm.
be thinking about who's making the decisions for that step. So, for example, if I've got one of my leaders who wants to step into this role as part of a succession, I'm going to make sure that they get the face time with the chairman and with the investors because they're making the decision. So really what you want to know is what's their buy-in criteria for the leader that's going to get the opportunity and the privilege to lead this organization at some point in the future. And if that's the criteria for buying, you have to build out your personal value proposition to deliver on what the value drivers are for the selectors. And so it's no different if I'm wanting to get to a manager of managers position. I want to know who's going to make that decision, and I'm going to go get some face time with that individual. But the network can help me get there, right? So I met somebody at the conference here that I know needs to be inside the Schneider Electric organization, and I know she'd thrive working for the leader that I introduced her to yesterday. It's just
I love that.
The network matters.
And this backpack idea, I have a gut feel that it might be a book. There might be a book coming with this backpack idea.
Yeah.
Talk about your experience here at Connects FM, this conference, the leadership summit yesterday.
So we just wrapped up with Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, Mr. Wonderful, and great insight on the market.
Know your numbers, right?
I worked for a guy named Brian Kessler, who was the CEO of Tenneco, and Brian, that was a rule. I'm not sure he ever said it out loud, but he said it with every question, and you never went into a meeting if you didn't know the numbers and anticipated the questions, but reinforced by Kevin. But the other thing he said that really stood out for me is if you get into the, like a role like this, with the primary driver being just to go make money, you're probably not going to be as successful as you could be. The driver really has to be a passion for the business. And so it made me smile because for me, this assignment is full circle. I started my career in 1981 as a refrigeration technician at MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston. And now here I am leading an organization that does refrigeration services. So I had an opportunity to get inside one of the vans at Remco last week, and everything was right where it used to be. So
I know what this stuff goes.
What it was, yeah. So some of it was digital now, but yeah, it was good, and I do have a lot of passion for this space and for service, for customer service, and just for service in general. I grew up in a family of police officers. I got 6 brothers, 5 of them were on the job, and that's a service business. It just is.
It's a great story. I would remiss if I didn't talk to our audience about our Relationship Economics Summit. That is, James has attended the last couple of years. Hope he'll come back this year. It is this October, specifically 13 to 15 is our Next Up leadership program, where we don't call it Next Gen, we talk about Next Up. Those are leaders that are ready for that next level of professional kind of responsibility, professional growth, perhaps a P&L or a bigger P&L. And then the Wednesday is an overlap, and then senior executives stay that really Thursday and Friday for a symposium where you guys you sit next to executives from other industries, and you find that you have a lot in common.
Well, and it's the diversity of thought too, and the way that they approach problems. The one I went to last year, there was a whole conversation around using AI for salespeople development, and these AI bots that the salesperson can interact with in role playing, that's driven through AI. I never thought about that. It was great. It was a real night. I was texting with our commercial officer at Schneider at the time. But I guess the best testament I can say is that last year was my second year. The second year, I think I had three people there. I had one leader from SmartCare who I recommended that she attend, and then I had 2 emerging leaders
attending the Next Up,
from Schneider that attended. So yeah, a lot of value. And again, it's the diversity of thought because of the cat. And I mentioned this to you at the last one. I think you do a wonderful job of casting that collective that comes to it, because there's people from all different backgrounds. And when we put a challenge up on the table, just hearing how Linda Tucci approaches it,
Very different lenses.
It opens your eyes into the art of the possible.
For our audience, if you missed it, you missed a good one. James Mylett, former Senior Vice President of U.S. Digital Buildings at Schneider Electric, more recently CEO of Smart Care. We're here at Connects FM National Conference. We did a leadership summit here yesterday. James and Eric McCarthy and General Tom Bostic were also on the agenda. And James has been, again, a dear friend and a client. And we also talk about soccer. We talk about motorcycles. We talk about family and just life together. So I hope this has been of interest and value to you. We try to publish these Inner Circle live streams and podcasts on a regular basis. So I hope you'll continue to come back and listen to and or watch these wherever you consume this content. On behalf of our team, my name is David Nour with Avnir. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks, everybody. Take care.